morning, everyone, and I'm very happy to be here and to share with you today my participation in a ceremony that I joined when I was traveling through Sinhai in traditional Amdo. So today I'm going to talk about that and share with you some of my observations. But before I do that, I'll just give some background, just in case maybe some of us are not familiar with the Ngagpas or the tantric practitioners of Rebkong. So I will start my presentation with just a brief background, which I term historical myth or mythical history, and that is because when we are dealing with the very early times of Tibetan imperial history, the history and myth blends, and it's very hard sometimes to know, to differentiate between the two. So when we are looking at the late tantric movement in Tibetan context, we can speak of actually the white Sangha or the Gedun Karpo, as opposed to the Gedun Marpo, the red Sangha, the monastics, which we're all familiar with. So when we're actually looking at the white Sangha or the Ngagpas, it's a translation from the word mantrin, which basically means he or she who has control or power over the mantras. The early history of this movement is traced back to Padmasambhava and to Yese Chogyal, his Tibetan consort, sometime in the 8th and 9th century. We also have some references that the yogins at Samye Monastery, the first Tibetan Buddhist monastery, would gather at a chapel known as the Nakba Duduling, which was a chapel at Samye Monastery dedicated to tantric divinities. So this is one of the references. Another figure that also is important and figures out in the early history of the tantric, late tantric movement in Tibet is the Emperor Rinpoche. Rinpoche is not his real name. His real name is Trikchuk Detsen, but he's known as Rinpoche, which basically means the one with the long hair, the rastas. So the story has it that he had such long hair, dreadlocks, that he would lay them down on the floor and invite the monks to sit on them. So that's kind of an early indication of his Ngagpa leanings. That's why he gets that name as well. And lastly, very briefly, everyone knows Lalung Palge Dorje, who was the assassin of the Emperor Langdharma. And the reason I'm mentioning him is because some of the 8 great yogis of Rebkong trace their lineage back to Lalung Palge Dorje. Now, from his biography, we read that he was a soldier fighting against the Chinese on the Eastern Front. He got disillusioned by the casualties of war, and he became a student of Padmasambhava. He ordained as a Buddhist monk by Vimala Mitra, and he trained with many teachers and became an accomplished Buddhist practitioner. Here we see him flying in this image of him showing that he was quite an adept. The story has it that he assassinated the Tibetan Emperor Langdharma because he suppressed Buddhism in central Tibet. And according to later interpretations, he didn't really kill him, assassinated him, but he performed the controversial rites of liberation. Anyway, the story has it that he left after that and went to Amdo, where he actually settled there and trained some of the Ngagpas that later will become what is known as the Ngagpas of Rebkong. So let's look a little bit about these people and the place. So their tradition in Rebkong, it belongs in traditional in Amdo in Singhai province, and they're probably the largest lay tantric movement in the world. According to some estimates, there are about 2,000 or 3,000 Ngagpas living in Rebkong and the surrounding areas. They're also known as the Rebkong Nangmang, which basically means just the community of the Rebkong Ngagpas. This community has produced notable masters throughout the centuries, and here is a list of them. I don't have time to go over them, but I very briefly want to mention Rigsinpal Tasi, because he's the one who has given the community some sort of a common identity and also organized them and systematized them. So also gave them some vows. So basically we can speak of the community really having its own distinct identity from the 17th century onward. Now, among those names, you will see there's some famous tertons as well that figure from the Ngagpas. And I guess I can briefly speak about the very last name on the list, and that's Lama Tarchin, who you might know of him, because he went to the US and spread the Vajrayāna teachings. So he established there also a Nakba lineage. Now, what are some features of the Nakba tradition in Rebkong? Well, as we all know, they're also known as Gokar Tsanglo Tsen, which literally means the ones with the white robes and the long matted hair. They received their ordination through tantric empowerments and by upholding tantric vows. They're usually farmers and nomads, the Ngagpas of Rebkong, and they enter the tradition either through family lineage, that means either the father or the uncle or some male member is a Ngagpa, and therefore the son or the nephew becomes, or because they have faith in the Vajrayāna teachings, so they can become Ngagpas this way. They're commonly divided into the Mindroling section and to the Nintik, based on Jigma Lingpa's treasure lineages. They're also known as the sunny side and the shady side, and that has to do with the sun, which the valley that's divided between River Gu, so where the sun falls. Most of them live in family settings and are not celibate, although some of them are celibate as well. So they mainly study and practice the Buddhist tantras. They participate in regular ritual practices in monasteries, in people's home or tantric halls. And they're known for performing tantric rituals for the community or individuals. Now, some of them can be for curing diseases. They're called in to drive evil spirits away, to control the weather, or to perform divination, and in return they get some money and food. So the ceremony that I attended is known as the Zhitro ceremony, and I'll speak more about it. Here we can see the actual village of Sakarlung, and you can see there's two tantric halls actually, two tantric houses, Nakhang. The one that is covered is where the actual ceremony took place, and here we can see the Ngagpas are being called after a short break to enter the tantric hall. The inner sanctuary it was reserved for the Dorje and for the senior tantris, who were actually sitting in the inner sanctuary. And the rest of the other Ngagpas and myself and the other visitors, we were sitting into the main hall. Here you can see an image of the main hall, how in rows. And I just want to bring your attention to two banners, which I'm going to very briefly mention, because they kind of give us some indication of the ethos of those Ngagpas. The blue banner reads something like this: Ngagpas, holders of the three vows, in this place be thoroughly satisfied with the gathering of the accumulations, reading, reflecting, and meditating with an all-extensive spaciousness. May the Vajrayāna teaching spread. And the red banner read something like this: with the braided hair on your head, remain in the uncontrived. Cover your body wearing the white cloth without being contrived. Behold your true face in the uncontrived simplicity of your mind. It is said that in respect to these three uncontrives, one is a genuine Ngagpa. Now I have a short video here, which I'm not sure how to play. Maybe you need to press. But just briefly, we don't need to see the whole thing. Yeah. Sample. I'm sorry for the bad quality, but I wasn't prepared, and this is with my mobile phone. So we can stop the video and move on to the, go back to the Zhitro liturgy. Now, this one took place, and then what we saw was a little sample of the actual ceremony. It took place between June 21st and 24th, 3 full days, and it was organized by the tantric house known as the Chodu Nankang De, and it consists of 4 villages. We're actually sharing a tantric house. The village of Sakarlung approximately had about 50 households, and it's an hour drive from Rebkong town. There were 400 yogi participants, but there were no female Nakmos present. And when I interviewed the Dorje Lopon and I said what happened to the female Ngagpas, he said to me that
Sorry to interrupt you. You have 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. So, well, anyway, I just complete this story. When I interviewed him, he said that they're illiterate. That's why they didn't participate in the ceremony. Anyway, so this is Dorje Lopon, Tamdrin Gale, that I've interviewed. He gave me some interesting information. He told me about the first Zhitro ceremony that took place in 1981 at the Chucha village, and he has been contacted every year since. The way they decide where to do the ceremony is by lottery and rotation every year. And as long as it doesn't conflict with the times of harvest and the collection of the cordyceps, it is fine. And during the ceremony, the entire Karma Lingpa's ritual cycle is used. And generally, the yogins are expected to follow the 3 vows, as we saw before. Okay, so very quickly, let me go over the text. This is the self-liberating mind, the profound dharma of the peaceful and wrathful deities. It's a text that was revealed by Karma Lingpa in the 14th century. Originally, it is said that it was authored by Padmasambhava, and it was discovered by Karma Lingpa. Now, this is a composite text. There's many sections to it that were performed. It is practiced by the Kagyu and Nyingma schools of Tibetan Buddhism. And the reason for that is to supplicate the deities that manifest during the dissolution of consciousness in the state of Bardo. Now, it's very interesting that the deities described in the Zhitro mandala are not the same as the ones in the Guhya Garbha Tantra. And I think this is something, of course, we can discuss and research further. Here is some images of the 42 peaceful deities that reside in the human body, and the mandala of the 58 wrathful deities that reside in the head. So the post-liturgical activities were also fascinating. It was the first time that I attended a ritual spitting ceremony, which I have never seen before, and apparently not many people know about it. It seems to be associated with some sort of breath magic. The only reference I could find is into some Taoist text, where basically the Ngagpas, after at the end of the ceremony, they would spit blessed water that was there during the entire duration on the people who lined up. Let's look at this short video. Can you please start the video? Okay, so you can see some of the men were half naked because apparently the belief is that it could heal them of any illnesses and drive away any kind of evil influence. Another post-liturgical activity after the ceremony is we all gathered on top of a hill overlooking at Sakarlung village, where the ceremony of Sur and Tsang offerings were offered. Now, the Sur ceremony is usually performed for the Bardo beings, for the beings that after they had passed away and they're in the intermediate state. And also, according to my informants, it's also very good for the local spirits to propitiate them. And you can see they use 3 white substances and 1 red substance. And there's a short video. We can also play it very quickly. It shows kind of the festival. I think this one is just how it ended up with fireworks, and everyone was really happy at the end. Okay, we can stop the video. That's just a very short one. So, some parting reflections, very briefly. The annual Karling Zhitro ceremony that takes place in Rebkong every year, it's really an important occasion for community building and participation. And what it does, it reinforces the religious identity of Tibetan Buddhist communities in Rebkong. The Tibetans who attended the ceremony did so for the sake of accumulating merit for themselves, their families, or their deceased relatives, and for forging an auspicious connection with the Buddhist teachings, Chödrel. Now, the tantris who conducted the ceremony did so for a variety of reasons, including but not limited to the offerings of butter and bread, economic incentives, as well as the religious aspirations. Now, they gathered something about maybe $70 because I was also offered money because I was participating in the ceremony, so they gave me, so I counted at the end, so the total amount of money was amounted to $60. So it's not great money, but I guess it was something. So I don't think the economic...
Sorry to interrupt you, time is up.
Okay, so I don't think the economic incentive was the main thing for them to participate in the ceremony. Now, one interesting question which I would like to investigate perhaps in the future, if I have time, is to which extent the textual traditions of the Karling Zhitro, which are very rich, we have many commentaries, are closely reenacted in the ritual ceremonies that we just saw, and whether the ritual experts really have an understanding of all the different sections of the ritual that took place. But that, I think, will have to form a separate study. Thank you very much for your attention.